What's up, Face Toaster fans? Hope you brought your headset on a full charge and your caffeine of choice because this game is going to chew you up and spit you out. I just spit on my own floor, didn't I? Welcome to the newest VR combat game with sword fighting, flamethrowers, and fan service? Well, there seems to be a lot here, so let's get into it. Before this video continues, I did want to say thank you to Leafboat Studios, the creator of MindXcope, for sponsoring this video. They were incredibly kind in accepting all the feedback I gave them about the game before this recording session, and I think that if they keep in the direction that they're going in, this game could be even better on full release. Even taking my suggestion to add in better sound effects that they exceeded my expectations on. MindXcope has a pretty simple storyline. Essentially, you're inside of a simulation designed to help people relieve stress by mercilessly beating the crap out of everything that moves. However, I feel like fighting in this game has just increased my stress level to new heights. Because even just in this version of the demo, I had to wait till I got lucky enough to spawn in with a great weapon pair-up, to then just get my butt handed to me on a silver platter. It is difficult like no other. With some of you fans out there of games like Blade Sorcery or other combat games and want a progression-based challenge, I think you'll like this a lot. While it doesn't exactly lean into the realism that Blade Sorcery uses with its weight distribution, it has its own level of difficulty and that its combat system is actually managed to deter sword spammers. I'm sure that all of us have gone into any kind of combat game where we're backed into a corner and we start waving our arms around like somebody who thinks that they're cool when nobody's watching. However, frequent sword spams hardly do any damage, even against the weaker enemies. Some of the secondaries can be pretty useful, but with their limited usability. You can really only rely on using them to get out of a tight situation and not something to carry you through the whole level. There are some pretty cool secondaries though, like a flamethrower, a shield, poison goo, and even frost bullets. And that's merely scratching the surface. But the thing that actually does the most damage to enemies in here is utilizing the finishing moves. Whenever you fight an enemy, you'll notice two bars. The first one is obviously its health, and if it wasn't, then I would have a gross misunderstanding of how this game operates. And the second bar is something I like to refer to as a stun bar. The stun bar will fill up slightly by using your sword and your secondary ability to do the damage to the enemy, and when the stun bar is filled, the game will give you prompts to slash the enemy in certain directions to deal a bunch of damage. The largest way to fill up this bar though is actually to parry the enemy's attacks. You'll be able to hold the sword vertically, diagonally, or horizontally to parry the attack. Also, don't question why I have a pirate sword. I was just playing a VR pirate game the other day.
Who are you? You want to know who I am? Oh God, I'm a pirate!
And to properly parry the enemy's attacks, you'll actually need to study their movement patterns. Some of the enemy's attack patterns can be pretty obvious just after your first run or two, but the developers actually took the time to add in the most subtle movement twitches between some of the actions that will only give you a second or two to react properly. Some of the enemies even properly fake you out when they'll go and try to swing at you and it looks like you're about to swing horizontally and then they switch it up and go vertical. I feel like it took me an hour before I even started to get slightly comfortable with countering the smaller enemies. And then there's this guy with a robot head, a huge white suit, and two meat cleaver swords. Fuck this guy in particular. But hey, at least they have some of the best coordinated choreography that I have yet to see in VR.
1, 2, 3, 4, let me hear you scream if you want some more, like, push it.
But even if the enemies are more difficult like that guy versus just fighting a bunch of these little robot crabs, that's what I like about the dynamic of this game. Depending on the context of the situation, a bunch of these little enemies could actually be more dangerous than one of the heavier hitters in the game. Because since parrying is the main way to go to try to kill a bunch of enemies, you can try to take little jabs here and there at a bunch of these little guys, or have to try to parry all of them individually, and since they don't all attack at the exact same time, it makes it very difficult. And while this game focuses on mechanics more than realism, I think one thing that does add to the realism of the swordplay, as well as the difficulty that I noticed, is that you can't just block by holding your sword out in front of you at a safe distance. So those of you with the Gorilla Tag Long Arms mods are out of luck. You actually need to have somewhat proper sword handling, and no, this is not the talk because that is not my responsibility. Proper blocking requires that you hold your sword close enough to you, otherwise it doesn't register, adding to the difficulty. Because it would be far too simple for me to hold out my sword in front of me and block at a distance to where they couldn't hit me, but I could block their attacks. And after properly battling the enemy, they may drop a weapon, health, or something else to help you along your journey of murder and mayhem. There are several levels per world that you travel to, and each have their own intermediate point. So after going through each room and beating each combination of enemy, you'll have a transition phase where you get to pay for weapon upgrades, pay for extra health, buy new weapons, and other options that will be revealed upon full release. Combat aside, I think those of you who like good visuals will really enjoy MindXcope. Obviously from these videos you can see what it looks like, but being immersed inside VR, I would say that the art and aesthetic feels more like a roguelite Borderlands in VR. I 100% love the visuals in here. It's not another game using generic human models off of Blender, but using uniquely crafted characters with their own movesets. However, this game is not perfect either because it does have some aspects that I hope it improves on. But keep in mind that I am playing an early access release version, so mine could differ from the full release, and if there's any massive changes, I will leave them in the notes down in the description below for all of you. First off, this game seems to have a severe lack of voice acting. The tutorial is all just readable text and gesturing at you to complete certain actions. Even going in the main lobby to pick up your weapons, there's just a random mute NPC standing there. Speaking of that, it seems like there's not really a lot of context in the game. I understand that the main plot is that you're inside a simulation that's designed to help you relieve stress, but it feels like there should be more to it than just that. Which really isn't a jab at the game itself, just hopefully thinking that they'll add in more to the voice and story down the line. Heck, if they wanted to use my voice and I had the time to do it, I would gladly do it because I enjoyed myself in here. It was a great game to play. I do also hope that they add more of a weapon selection down the line. Currently, when you spawn into the main lobby, it gives you a starter sword of a chosen effect and a secondary ability, and the ability to upgrade them later on, like how I mentioned before. But those are all specific to your actual runs inside the level and they don't carry over. And while having a random roll can add to the difficulty, I would hope that later on they can add unlockable weapons or even unlockable starter statuses depending on how many enemies you kill. Because currently you just pick up the weapons it provides you and go into combat. It would be great later on that instead of you randomly receiving a weak frost sword, you start out in the game with a sword that has no status effects, and you can purchase a starter status effect like a weak frost effect, depending on how well you do in the runs before you die. Sort of like a weapon shop or a skill tree in a sense. I can also easily see fans of this game making it a challenge where they try to go beat the entire game with just the starter sword if Leafboat decides to go down this route. It's unclear on the direction that they'll go with this game though from a price perspective, but I do know that they're planning on doing a full release on Steam VR and standalone Quest on the same day. And if you're not sure about it because you don't know what it's going to look like on full release, I would recommend at least wishlisting it because I had a lot of fun in here. Thanks again to Leafboat for helping me keep the lights on, and I can't wait to visit MindXcope on full release. And did you know that this whole script was written by ChatGPT? No, I'm just kidding. Or am I? Yeah. Think about that when you go to bed tonight. MindXcope? More like a total mind fuck. This is the end of the video. I don't know why you're still here. Okay, bye.